When you think about football rivalries, the first thing that will pop in your mind will probably be Real versus Barça, perhaps United versus Liverpool, or your own local derby. But I can guarantee that none of those rivalries are as violent as the ones I'm showing you today. I'm talking about rivalries fueled by war, matchups that are deadly for players, fans, and pretty much everyone involved. In this video, you'll discover many rivalries outside the big leagues that will blow your mind due to how fierce they are. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Starting out at number 10 with AlAhly versus Zamalek. This one is not only the biggest match in Egypt, but also in the entire continent of Africa. It's a passionate affair between two clubs that are arguably the two biggest in their continent, and it can get really heated most of the times. On one side, you have AlAhly, who are traditionally affiliated with lower class individuals, while Zamalek tend to have richer fans. Those discrepancies in working classes lead to many conflicts that sometimes have little to do with football. For example, in 1971-72, a match between the two teams had so much crowd violence, injuries and deaths that the rest of the season had to be cancelled. When it comes to football itself, AlAhly is the winner here with 108 wins against Zamalek's 80. Number 9. Zivnik vs Vélez. The Yugoslav war ended almost 30 years ago, but every time the Mostar derby happens, the wound opens up a bit. Zivnik fly the Croatian flag in Bosnian land and were initially created to promote the idea of a Croatian state. But after a series of bans in the 1920s and 30s, the club was officially closed by the communist Yugoslav regime due to its fascist affiliations. Vélez on the other hand thrived while Zivnik were banned, winning several Yugoslav cups and even had good performances in Europe. Then, in 1992, Bosnia and Herzegovina were declared an independent nation and Zivnik were re-established. Although they would have to wait 8 years before they could actually join the Bosnian First League, when they were finally accepted, a brutal rivalry was revived. In March 2000, Zivnik and Vélez played against each other for the first time in over 50 years, and their battles continue to be the fiercest ever since. Zivnik taking Vélez former stadium is just a tip of the iceberg when it comes to this rivalry, as there have been numerous incidents of fans desecrating graves belonging to those who fought in the Bosnian War and painting swastikas all over the city. From a footballing point of view, Zivnik is far more successful, having won 35 matches against Vélez 20. Number 8. Millwall vs West Ham United. For those who watch Green Street Hooligans, this one won't be really that surprising, but I can guarantee that this rivalry is just as violent as it was shown in the movie, if not even more. The origin of this feud dates back to the late 19th century when both sets of supporters worked as dockers at shipyards for different firms. Those same firms competed for the same business and that only exacerbated their local derby. They played the majority of their matches before the First World War, and to this day Millwall is still the most successful, with 38 wins over West Ham's 34. It is undoubtedly England's most storied and violent rivalry, with various deaths occurring related to their matches, and since they don't play each other that often, the match is always a highly anticipated fixture. Number 7. Chester vs Wrexham. Famously known as a cross-border derby, this rivalry is one of the most bizarre in all of Europe. Both teams are really close to each other. In fact, Chester Stadium straddles the England-Wales border and its pitch is entirely in Wales. Although they're really close, they couldn't be further apart when it comes to their national sentiment. Wrexham are clearly Welsh and Chester is an English club. And with both teams playing in the English league system, it's obvious their matches are fiery to say the least. It's the English match with the most stewards per capita, and there are a lot of procedures to make sure this game doesn't end in calamity. To paint a better picture for you, if you're a Chester fan living in Wrexham and wanted to watch a derby, you would have to travel on your own to Chester, get a police coach to Wrexham, then get the coach back to Chester, only to travel home again to Wrexham. Absolutely mental. Number 6. Gremio vs Internacional. When people think about South American derbies, their mind will probably shout Boca vs River, but this rivalry known as Grenal is also one of the most violent in the entire world. This fixture is considered the cultural mark of South Brazil, dividing the Rio Grande do Sul state in two. Its tradition dates back to the early 20th century, where Grêmio won the first match between the two teams by 10-0, and from that point on, many other crazy bouts between them would occur. And as of 2023, Internacional is still the most successful, with 160 wins over Grêmio's 141. This derby is also a cultural reference for the Gaúchos, similar to the North American Cowboys, with most fans choosing one of the two clubs due to their family lineage and history. Number 5. Mohun Bagan vs East Bengal. The Kolkata derby might not be the best match when it comes to player skill level, but is still one of the most culturally significant rivalries in the Asian continent. The two teams have played each other over 300 times, with East Bengal being slightly more successful, having 15 more wins than their rivals. While Mohun Bagan tend to represent the nativists in the region, similarly to Rangers in Glasgow, the majority of East Bengal supporters are immigrants with a distinct culture and accent. These clashes often produce violence, and every match is played in front of packed crowds, resulting in a thrilling and unique atmosphere that you cannot experience in any other part of the world. Number 4. Partizan vs Red Star Belgrade. It's hard to top the atmosphere of this derby when it comes to European rivalries. Both teams have a certain aura associated to them, with Partizan representing the strong, orderly individuals with an unbreakable spirit, while Red Star tends to be associated with purity and burning passion, with the club being rooted in young people's rebelness and fiery energy. While Red Star have won more trophies including a Champions League, their bouts are almost highly contested affairs that surpass the football sphere, with their ultras Gobari and Delia taking their feud into other sports, most notably basketball. Number 3. AIK vs Djurgarden. The Twin Derby is arguably the most vicious rivalry in all of Scandinavia. It is called Twin Derby due to the fact that both teams were founded just 3 weeks apart in 1891, and they have since went on to battle over 200 times, with AIK being the most successful. It is also a rivalry that divides Stockholm and clashes the east side versus the northwest and west parts of town. But what makes it the most sought after match in Sweden is that, similarly to the Belgrade derby, Djurgarden and AIK are rivals in multiple sports and are the only teams in Sweden to win multiple championships in both football and ice hockey. The rivalry is always present and with high stakes on the line in almost every match. Number 2. Wisla Krakow vs Cracovia. This match isn't called Holy War for no reason. There is a lot of hooliganism in Poland, but the most important rivalries are played across towns. However, this one is an exception. Wisla and Cracovia have their stadiums 500 meters apart from each other, and their hatred dates back to the early 20th century. While Wisla were owned by the communist police for over 40 years, Cracovia had deep Jewish roots, and they hate Wisla so much that their group of supporters is even called Anti-Wisla. It's also common for fans of both clubs to ask random people on the street which club they support, and if the answer is their rivals, they will violently beat the innocent person on the spot. Players, managers, directors, nobody is safe when the Holy War is going on, and the derby has even been banned in several instances. There's no particular winner on who's the most violent, but Wisla takes the crown for the most wins in that iconic clash. Number 1. El Salvador vs Honduras. You can argue all you want if your local derby is the most fearsome in the world or not, but there was only one football match in history that provoked a war. During the 60s, many people from El Salvador migrated to Honduras, which caused the locals to become extremely upset. Eventually, Honduras adopted a land reform policy that forcibly seized land from Salvadorans and awarded the same to Honduran citizens. As you can guess, this caused even more tension between the two nations, and it ironically happened close to the 1970 World Cup playoffs. The two nations played against each other 3 times in a short period of time, with El Salvador being the one who qualified to the World Cup. But it would be the violence across those matches that made their encounter famous, with many fans losing their lives fighting in the stadiums and streets. This would be the last straw, and El Salvador attacked Honduras in a brief war that would only last 100 hours, but would be one of the main reasons behind the Salvadorian Civil War just a decade later. And that is it. I hope you liked this video. If you did, hit that thumbs up so I know you want to watch more content like this. And as always, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the most interesting football discussions, stories, and top 10 lists. Thank you for watching until the end. I appreciate you, and I will see you soon.